Why does Indivisible look so good? Well, it's probably because the animation director is Muriel Cartwright, who was also the lead animator on Skullgirls, a fighting game which takes its design philosophy from classic fighting games like Street Fighter Third Strike. Something the animators at Lab Zero Games do really well is push exaggerated movement to the extreme, while remaining visually coherent and keeping gameplay concise. There's a strong understanding of solid drawing, appeal, and exaggeration among the team, three of the more important animation principles if you want something to look fun and interesting in fighting and action games. Obviously, all principles are fairly important, but there's a special charm when combining a solid understanding of human anatomy and then distorting that anatomy. We're going to take a little look at the animation of Indivisible, with a focus on the three animation principles: solid drawing, exaggeration, and appeal, and maybe touch upon the fundamental of readability. Okay, quick shout out to this video's sponsors, Skillshare. Do you want to get better at drawing human anatomy and thus strengthen your skills as a character animator? Perhaps be as good as Lab Zero in your portrayal of character movement? Then quickly click the link in the video description for 2-3 months on Skillshare. As you know, Skillshare is that online learning community everyone's sharing, which covers dozens of creative topics with thousands of videos from industry veterans. The affordable premium monthly subscription, which is less than $10 a month when subscribed for a year, gives unlimited access to communities that are just right for you. This series, for example, by Bethany Lindell, is really good as it goes over body proportions and such, and this one by Leah Goren goes over the idea of keeping a daily sketchbook to keep your ideas flowing. Okay, back to the video. So what are solid drawing, exaggeration, appeal, and readability? And how are they used throughout Indivisible? Solid drawing is the understanding of construction in 3D space, and is a necessity if you're going to become a character designer and animator. Muriel Cartwright has said in many talks and interviews about the importance of solid drawing, and often refers to figure drawing and life drawing as big skills if you're going to be doing a lot of 2D character animation like what's on display in Skullgirls and Indivisible. Solid drawing isn't strictly figure drawing and understanding human anatomy. It's the understanding of the weight and presence of a character or object in the space they occupy. You can liken solid drawing to the foundations of a building. You can build a box in the same way you can draw a person, but if the skeletal foundations aren't there underpinning your structure, then it could all collapse and not make visual sense. If you have a better understanding of exactly how your character is put together, you'll have a much better understanding of how they move and how you can animate them more convincingly. So what's exaggeration? Exaggeration is taking a thing and making it more of a thing. It's like setting something to 150%. For instance, someone lifting an axe to swing, if drawn normally, would look fine. But if you want to push that clarity of that move even further, then you would perhaps get this result. Sorry, I had to draw this with my 2-year-old pretending to feed me a sock. That was fun. Sometimes exaggeration is manifested as a smear, which is basically a simulation of what would be motion blur in film, of a quick action while doubling up as a sort of time-saving animation trick. That's not a 100% definition, but generally you'd associate a smear as a type of motion blur, and you'll find that there's usually 2 or 3 common variants of this exaggerated movement. You've got your classic smear, which is a rubbery, sometimes disconnected stretch of the character, appendage, or object. You've got your multiple, which simulates a kind of camera shutter effect, where a particular element of a character or object is repeated. And you've got your broken limb, which is less often used and relies on certain arcing actions for it to work, but I'd still place it under the smear sub-principle. The broken limb can work really well for portraying strong movements on heavy objects and the like. Smears perfectly serve the function over form purpose in game design. Skullgirls use smearing a lot, as it often required that immediate player feedback. Appeal is how appealing a character is to look at. It doesn't necessarily mean attractive, but interesting. A lot of the time, circles form a better looking shape than squares, but you can still make squares look interesting and thus more enjoyable to animate. It's a bit of a vague one, this principle. There's not a solid rule that applies to anything you create, and personal tastes differ, obviously. As long as your character looks and feels interesting and not stiff or boring, then appeal has been applied. And readability covers a few sub-fundamentals, but in this instance we're going to refer to silhouettes. This is making sure all the available information of a character is portrayed on screen clearly, and this is important for a game like Indivisible. Readability sort of stems from the classic staging animation principle, which itself translates less and less as time goes on, as staging is more of a film and theatre type phrase, and doesn't quite mean the same thing when talking about game animation these days. Don't worry, I'm going to cover the 5 fundamentals of video game animation in a future episode. So how does Indivisible use these? Well, the first thing to notice is that the environments are fully rendered 3D models and coloured with a gentle flatness, allowing the 2D characters to both stand out and fit in. And that's because their design considers their presence in a 3D space, understanding how limbs move and react, their weight, things like that. You'll notice Ajna has shading on various limbs and clothing, like her lower leg and under her arms, to give her a more defined and three-dimensional presence. Generally, you do believe that she belongs in this environment, and it's mostly Ajna who traverses the world through platforming. He said, having only played the game for about 5 hours, not knowing what else there is to come, so we get to know her moveset more and get a feel for how she moves. Something I like is how there's a turning animation, both for when she's running around towns and such, and for characters during battle. It could have been a simple horizontal flip like in many 2D platform games, but there's a conscious effort here to show how characters rearrange their positions when focusing in a new direction. The designers care enough to show you that these are three-dimensional characters and not flat drawings. Often this sort of thing would be detrimental to gameplay, as these are all extra frames that take up valuable response time. But because these frames are shown outside of player control, you can have a bit more fun. Now, readability comes in here, specifically silhouette. The stronger your solid drawing skills, then the more solid your silhouette will likely become. But a more interesting silhouette also relies on the appeal of the character. Smooth arcs quite often create very appealing shapes that are easy on the eye and easily identifiable on screen. And guess what sorts of things are made of smooth arcs? It's blobby muscles and wavy clothing, something human and humanoid characters are generally composed of. You can look at almost any character in Indivisible and be able to identify them if they were blacked out. Kind of like Who's That Pokemon, you know? The more appeal you give your character, the stronger their silhouette will likely be. And the better your solid drawing skills are, the more likely it'll be that the appeal will come easier to you. Being able to correctly compose a character gives you the chance to exaggerate both their proportions and movements. Ajna is relatively average within the larger ensemble of characters, when you have characters like a short stocky bloke and a huge angular robot with a sword. But she does have some exaggerated moves, they just don't need to be set to 200%. I mean, when you look up, she kind of makes this big gesture, and even just swinging her axe and spear gives her these really bendy poses that just wouldn't be possible in real life. Like Mariel Cartwright has said in her GDC talk about Skullgirls, many of these frames are barely noticeable, but they do have an impact. You don't see it, but you feel it. And when you have all four characters smashing the opponent in one go, it gets pretty mental and it's a joy to look at. You've got each unique character with their own unique way of attacking. Now, I won't cover every character as I've yet to unlock all the characters, but let's have a little look at some of the moves that some of them do, shall we? Let's start with Tungar's whip attack. He's a short, stocky, confident, square-shaped bloke, and he holds himself upright and poised to fight, but he does so with a little bit of flair. There's an air of jovialness to him. He dashes off in a nice dynamic pose, snaps into the start of his anticipation, and he's got these little eye peeking there to make sure he's aiming the right way. And he's got this nice arc to signal the power. His turban begins to unravel, and then wham! Straight into this exaggerated hit that lasts for a good few frames to really drive home that impact. Notice the multiple smear here, and notice these additional blur spikes pointing off those multiples to add even more speed to that frame. Following this with another strong arc, and then he rolls literally into a whirly spin, completely removing any anatomical detail, but retaining the colour palette and a few traits like his moustache. And this gives the move a chance to reset everything, bring his turban back onto his head, reset his stance, and then he rolls back to position. Now let's play that back in real time. That was over in 2 seconds. Imagine if there was a few more frames before that big attack frame, or if there were fewer frames on the follow-through. You'd be able to feel that something wasn't right. This is the tug of war you have to play when designing a move, calculating exactly how many frames feel right. Now it's Dar's sword swing. He's tall and slender, another confident poser, but more reserved than Tungar, seeing as he's more of a soldier. He runs forward with this nice line of action, a small frame for anticipation to jump up. This line is continued into the jump with his sword now parallel to his leg, which I love. A couple of frames reaching to pull his sword out, and then wham! no need for any more information than this. All the work is being portrayed in this huge arcing smear frame. He's pulled his sword out and swung it in this one instance. Like Tungar and many hard-hitting attacks, this pose is held to increase that impact. There's a couple of follow-up frames putting his sword away, and then if you follow up with the same attack, then this creates a nice flow into that same animation. You'll notice a slight bend on his sword both during the arc and as he puts it back, sort of close to the break the limb smear I talked about earlier, signifying both how rigid it is and the strength of the motion. I just want to say how damn cute Jensing's little sway is, pushing the weight of her body back by bending her knees. It's just lovely. Again, like Tungar and Dar, right before her attack there's a setup for what she's about to do, and the immediate next frame is all of that information in one hit. She's pulled out her Pesla mortar, her body contorted to allow for that weight, a big smear, a nice curved line of action, and this is then held for like 10 frames. And then she mixes it and everything, and there's a little smear on her glasses later on, and then the same thing, she gets into position to lift this heavy thing, a big smear, and some multiples, and then whoop, it's back in the bag. I really like Ajna's down attacks with the big heavy axe movement. I love this when she shifts the weight from one foot to the other, and you get a real sense of power behind that attack. With Zebei's arrow shot, he's got this nice curve as he launches himself backward and upward, tucking his legs into a somersault to quicken that centre of gravity. Rolling into this move where he steadies his bow with his feet. He pulls the arrows out from the bow, ready to release, and you've got this nice bounce back of the bow from that energy. When Baozi launches an attack, you've got this snappy movement into crossing her arms. Her coat raises from some unseen wind, but this gives some visual feedback into launching her Molotovs along with some screen shake. I love her cannon attack. And I think this is my favourite smear of the game, Qadira's shield swing. You've got this nice frame of her properly putting effort into this move, followed by this insane, long smearing arc, combined with a multiple image of the shield, some extra motion lines, and this great line of the body. This smear is so strong that even the next frame still has multiples catching up to the arc. And you've got some nice follow-through movement with that smooth, flowing cape as well. Man, all these characters just have such amazing design, animation, a real understanding of anatomy and movement. It's incredible. I just can't gush about this game enough. There's a couple of extra things I just want to mention before I sign off. I really like the characterization of Razmi and her seeming reluctance to partake enthusiastically in battle, like with her eye roll and just her general hunched over demeanour. Her dialogue always cracks me up.
Don't listen to Majna.
I get some real Raven vibes off her. I need to praise the effects animation in this game too. I really like the electric animation in the city signs. I'm a big fan of electrical animation as it is, particularly in action and sci-fi movies from the 80s and early 90s. It's just a sad little obsession of mine, and I love seeing it done well in games too. For instance, it's just really, really nice in Mega Man 11. And liquid animation is nice and fluid, pun intended. And man, the fire animation looks as good as anything Alex Redfish would ever produce. He's great, look him up. And I haven't even touched the enemy animation. I mean, I just don't have the time and it would totally require a video by itself, but they have just as much thought and consideration into solid drawing, exaggeration and appeal as any of the main characters. Let me know what your favourite enemy animation is below, would you? Oh, and also the intro animation by Studio Trigger is just mwah. I hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks to Skillshare and my patrons for funding this episode, and thanks to Aatrox, one of the animators on Indivisible, for all their help and information in making this video. And thanks to Lab Zero for making bloody awesome games. See you next time. Love you, bye.